Okay, Heavenly Father, as usual, every week we get the opportunity of getting together and to glorify your holy name. Just the fact that we're studying your word, Father, I can tell from where I'm sitting here that you're listening in and that you're smiling on us, because that is what you want us to do, to delve into your word, to try and not only understand it, but then to apply it in our daily lives. So help us, Father, throughout the week to whatever it is that we learn today, to apply it in our daily lives so that we can make other people's lives better. In your precious holy name we pray. Amen.
Right. Hallelujah.
All right, so microphones and cameras off, and we'll be back in a minute.
So,
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, so this week there's 11 pages, and the 11th page we'll get to hopefully by the end of the talk here, but think of this as an exercise that you can do yourself. The 11th page is an exercise that I did. Think of all the verb actions that Yahuwah has told or asked his people Israel to do. Shema, Shomer, Oseh, we got those three right at the top. Hear, guard, do. What else are we supposed to be doing? If those are three verbs, remember as a kid singing the song in Sunday school, trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. That was one of the songs we sang in Sunday school. Trust and obey, there's two verbs. So if you think through the entire Torah, just thinking, recall in your mind, in your own memory, start writing a list of the verbs. So I was doing this, and I came up with a list, and then I thought maybe I could organize them alphabetic sequence as a flow of consciousness, as a progressive, call it a meditation if you want. I was talking to a guy just the other day, and he was in a state of, let's call it despond or despair, or just your head beat up. Well, we're quite often, and all of us are in that position from time to time, sometimes more often than not. But see, that is the status of the first beatitude, where Yeshua said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So if we say, blessed are the poor in spirit, why isn't it blessed are those who have everything wonderful? They got their bills paid, they feel healthy and strong, and they feel like Yahweh is smiling on them. Why aren't those the blessed? So to look at just the human condition, what is it? What is the human condition? What is it to be a human treading the face of the earth for a few years? Some maybe only a few moments. He says that he's given the 70 years is your basic. Strong, you get 80, some you get a little bit more. Then there was that concept of 120 years, the Jubilee of 50 years. It's like, how much time does any of us get? It almost doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is, we're put here to run a course, to run a gamut. And I say that because the word earth, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, is Aleph Resh Zadi. The word Resh Zadi is to run a course. A courier, like a person delivering mail postage, will go on a certain route and drop off the mail each day. A person running 440-yard dash runs 440 yards. If you run the 50-yard, you run 50 yards. That's the course you run. So what's the course of a human walking the earth. It's the 22 letters in the alphabet. Well, that's quite a thing to say. Who can prove it? It's just what it is. We're going to call this the land of make-believe. That's today's title. So, someone asked me to read writing from some of this writing was about from the 1860s and following up to the 1950s, so it's about a 100-year span. And the editors wrote this. Now, this we have a problem. Think about this. It says, this is page 26 of this thing called the Third Testament. He who scorns this, his Third Testament, speaking of Jesus or God or whatever label they're putting on it, whoever scorns this testament for mankind is rejecting God himself and the Holy Spirit, which is therein revealed. Because this word, this writing that they're mentioning, is the sacred oil for the lamps of the Spirit in danger of being extinguished. It's the bread and wine from the table of the Lord, the eternal substance and the recreation of the Spirit. So here's the problem. As soon as somebody says, God told me this, and if you reject this word, you're going to burn in hell. You won't have the oil like the 5 of the 10 bridesmaids virgins, and he's going to slam the door in your face and said, I never knew you. Soon as somebody says that, we're not allowed to think. It's all over. You either agree with me or you're going to burn in hell. If you don't agree with me, it's because you're deceived by the devil. Gosh. In my life, every single time somebody has come up with a statement like that, conversation's over. Am I rejecting what they're saying? No. There's nothing I can do with what they're saying. If I choose to reject, hey, I think you're listening to a lying spirit. I think you're deceived because you think I'm deceived. Okay, game's over. No more conversation. Because it's put on the other person. If you don't believe me, you're deceived by the devil. You're going to burn in hell. You believe in a false God. Gosh. So tell you what. Let's talk about the land of make-believe. I'm not going to put that monkey on anybody's head. We're not going to do that. It's the land of make-believe. So let's look at Deuteronomy just as if it was a fairy tale. I'm not going to say, this is God's truth. And if you don't believe it, you're going to be damned to hell, flames of eternity, separated and alienated from him and everyone you love forever. I'm not going to tell you that. Let's just think, if you could invent a relationship between God and man, what are the dynamics? Is he a good guy, a nice guy? Is he a mean guy, a bad guy? Can he be trusted? The various religions around the world are just such permutations of possibilities. So for me to go back to the Hebrew alphabet and say, I'm going to choose to take as a given, choose to believe as a starting place that these 22 letters are not only self-referential of the true creator of the universe, that when the Aleph represents first person of identity and intent, then not only is it the one who wrote the alphabet, not only is it the one who created the cosmos, but if I am suddenly birthed, given consciousness, it's also referring to me. It's referring to anyone in any matter, because this alphabet I am postulating is a fractal model, kind of like the letter Samic, the skeleton of everything. can be found in this alphabet. And like the letter Samic, the vertical with the 3 horizontals is the way I usually draw it. There's different ways, but the point is, it's like a backbone with ribs. It's the mast of a ship with its 3 yard arms, a square-rigged sailing ship of yesteryear, days of yore. It's a tree with branches. It's a trellis. It's column and row. It's an organizational index. It's a picture that says, this is the way things are built, kind of like the DNA double helix. When we humans discover that there's a system, a rhyme, a reason, a structure, an order to the way the universe is built, then we project intentional, intelligent design. If everything was purely random and nothing had any rhyme or reason or order, that if it was totally chaotic disorder, we might say, well, why are things in disorder? Is there a reason? But when we see systematic order and we say, gee, why is it like that? Is there a reason? It looks like it screams of a reason. Hence the book of Jim Holt, Why Does the World Exist? He discusses that, looks at physics and philosophy, and human logic is very process, reasonable, oriented, meaning human mind builds one thing on the next on the next. This yields that, and because of that, then this. So Francis Schaeffer did that teaching series, the book, the TV series that says, how should we then live? In other words, he goes back to about 500 BC and looks at ancient Greek, beginnings of what we would call Western philosophy, the days of Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, the days of Daniel and Ezra, the days before Alexander the Great, the Macedonian, when the language was changed from paleo to right to left. It changed from left to right, and stuff happened in the earth around 500 BC. So Francis Schaeffer was analyzing philosophy, religion, politics, architecture, music, art, ideologies of culture. And then because of this, the next step away from that is evolving into this, the next step evolving into this, next step evolving into this. And he rolls this evolution like a revolution, like revolving from 500 BC all the way up to modern times. And he's saying, well, then what's next? What's in front of us? And apparently he didn't answer the question to the point of some satisfaction of hearing. And I'm suggesting that this, going back to listen to Yahweh's voice, is how should we then live? And I'm also suggesting that the progressive development in the chronological sequence of the alphabet letters is a map of human history at large, of an individual, more of a microcosm, as Yeshua, the Mashiach, the conversation made human. Literally, Mashiach means the conversation made tangible, not just anointed, but that's why he was the anointed one. That's why did he have to die? Because that's written into the text, the alphabetic sequence of the 22 letters. The Vav man put to the Zion, entombed, Ket, round rock, rolled in front, Tet, locking him in, holding him, Yod, and then Pei Zadi bursting out, resurrecting. Okay, so if we can follow this alphabetic sequence as the fractal pattern, the theory of everything, as Stephen Hawking was talking about, in this land of make-believe, how do we take what Yahuwah said and correlate it to these 22 letters? In fact, if I say, this God of the Old Testament no longer has anything to say to us because Jesus died on the cross. Yeah, well, we're not talking about that truth. We're talking about the land of make-believe. Let's go back to Deuteronomy. We looked at Deuteronomy 4 last week. We're going to look at Deuteronomy 10 and a few things in another thing in chapter 4 and also 7 and 8. And we're going to say, what if we could listen to Yahuwah's words to Israel? And that's the make-believe relationship between the creator of heaven and earth and a particular people group that we could be part of if we want to be. That's the land of make-believe. It has nothing to do with Judaism, nothing to do with Christianity, nothing to do with Greco-Roman, Western culture, or the Eastern Oriental. It has nothing to do with anybody's religion or politics or philosophy or science. Let's just look at what Yahuwah said. And let's imagine that there's this land, let's call it Zion, Zadi Yod Vav Nun. Why Zion? Well, Zadi Vav is the word that means command. Mem Zadi Vav, or Mem Zadi Vav Tav, mitzvot, is the plural. It's things that are commanded. Zadi Vav Vav Tav are a crew of either military or construction workers or kitchen staff or people that are under the command to do things as commanded. And it turns out that this word Mem Zadi Vav Tav also sounds like matzot, which is Chag HaMatzot, is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the word matzah, Mem Zadi Hey, a derivative word, means to find out how to do something. Find out how to do what? Anything. Anything you find out is Mem Zadi Hey. But to find out who is this Elohim of this make-believe people group called Israel, find out what he said to do. Well, that's Mem Zadi Vav. So in this land of make-believe, Zion, Zadi Yod mean Zadi Yod is a suffix, means my. In the Ernest Klein's dictionary, it means a desert dweller or a ship. It's like, what does a ship have to do with a desert dweller? Well, a desert is a dry place. The deck of a ship, when you're in the ocean, is the dry place in the midst of the sea. So the word ani, aleph nun yod, and many times, there's three words in particular for I am. One is ehye, aleph hey yod hey. One is, that's when Exodus 3, burning bush. One is anoki, aleph nun kaf yod, which is in Exodus 20, at the Ten Commandments. But this other one, ani, aleph nun yod, I am Yahweh. And the dictionary says it's an admiral of a fleet surrounded by his ships. So the word zavaot, Zadi Bet Aleph Vav Tav, is translated forces or legions. It's a military array. So Ani Yahweh is this picture, and on the eriktology logo where we have the kind of the orange burst with the Nun Samach surrounded by the letters. And then up in the right-hand corner, it says Ani Yahweh. That's like the emperor surrounded by his fleet as this matter of a prestigious display of grandeur. Now, I'm going to talk about this page 11 for a moment. At the top, I have Aleph Nun Aleph and Aleph Nun Hey. Well, Ani is Aleph Nun Yod. But Aleph Nun Aleph and Aleph Nun Hey means why, where, how? WTF? Where's the frisbee? We threw it right there. We can't find it. How can it be lost? We knew you reached for it, you missed, you turned around and it's gone. WTF? Deceived, overreached. It's a floundering ship because Aleph Nun Aleph, and like on the map, I have that upside down boot with a ship on it, a mast on the ship, so it looks like a ship. Anyway, there's this thing about ships the word for navy, navigation, steering wheel, helm, rudder, phonetic, meditation, pondering the spelling of words. There's these pictures embedded in all of Yahuwah's stuff. So this word, aleph nun hey, aleph nun aleph, groan, pretext for a quarrel, it's your ego in lament. The answer is believe in the one who said, Ani Yahuwah, the admiral surrounded by his forces, his military array, which I believe has something to do with the alphabet letters, because the word Zadi Bet, Aleph is army or military, and Aleph Vav Tav, oath, sign, symbol, signal, letter of the alphabet. So just the word Yahuwah Elohim Zevaot, master of legions, commander of forces, could be the one who establishes the position and the success as per every letter of the alphabet. Aleph Vav Tav. Zadi Bet is a word for turtle or tortoise or covered wagon, to swell up. What does that mean? Well, compared to a flat trailer, a covered wagon is something inflated. Compared to an open field where you got one or two farmers working and you have a massive farmers getting together to form a military, it's to swell up. Nun Zadi Bet is a knife handle stuck in, like Excalibur, the sword's handle sticking out of the rock. There's all these pictures. So everything in this Hebrew is pictures. But if we start off by saying, gosh, what is going on around here? The word ayin nun hey is this verb used in Isaiah 58. It's translated fast, humble yourself, afflict yourself, oppress yourself, take the burden upon you. But it also means answer, reply, respond, and sing. To respond to our circumstances by saying, Hodu la Yawaki Tov, Ki Leolam Hasto. Put it to music. Hodu la Yawaki Tov, Ki Leolam Chazdo. Hodu la Yawaki Tov, Hodu la Yawaki Tov, Ki Leolam Chazdo. Give thanks with a grateful heart. What's the big deal about singing? I heard years ago that some religious organizations were saying if your prayer counts a certain weight of merit, singing your prayer counts more. Why? Is that a scientific fact? Is that the way the universe is built? I don't know, maybe it is. So sing your thanks, sing your prayers. What are you doing? You're playing into affecting the circumstances. So if the poor in spirit is where it starts, it means your ship is floundering, you're lost at sea, you're going, what has happened to my life, or what's happened to America? What's happened to the world? What's in front of us? We're going to be attacked by Martians? Or is somebody going to crash the economy? Or, is some disease pestilence going to wipe us out? Listen, song and dance, smoke and mirrors, it's the dog and pony show. Who knows who's playing what? But why has Yahweh allowed the human mind to fall into a rut, a furrow of dismay, of despond? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Somehow he's got to get us there. And then what do? Well, what's the first thing you do? So when I was putting together this list of verbs, well, if Aleph, I am, the self-referential first person, whether it's Ani Yahweh, the successful admiral of forces of legions of military powers, or Aleph Nun Aleph, I'm in dismay, my ego in lament. What's Bet? Bet in the Paleo-Hebrew is drawn like this, unfurled. It's just the very beginning of a spiral. It's the inner piece opening up to the outer piece. It's the mind of an embryo developing then a backbone, and from the backbone, the arm, the leg, reaching out. It's this opening up of a flower, as it were. There's a picture of meaning within the structure of the orthography, the shape of the letter. Well, what's that saying? For the mind to reach out the hand is language is tied from the brain, the eye, the mouth, the hand. There's a map of these alphabet letters on your brain that is tying the eye and the mouth and the hand together. That's a whole other study. In fact, I've mentioned about Stan Tenen of Meru, M-E-R-U. He has some great things to say. He doesn't believe this stuff necessarily. He died a couple months ago, so it's just all on record now. But he was finding in the Hebrew alphabet, he's an astrophysicist, he was finding in the Hebrew alphabet that it's a gesture language. And he doesn't look at paleo. He didn't like the paleo at all. He's looking at the modern flame. But there's something about the letter bet, which is this hand reaching out from the mind. Well, the letter bet means on, with, among, through, against, in the condition of. If you're with somebody, you reach out, and I'm just saying there are these things that are built into the meaning of the letters. The word mem yod dalet, me yod, at the place of hand or at hand. Immediately at hand is what mem yod dalet means. But the word id, right, you've got philosophical, psychological terms, the id, which is like the subconscious, the ego on the conscious level, and the superego. That gets into a whole nother study. But what I'm saying, for the ego to be in lament, for your conscious mind to be in torment, if that's the aleph, the bet is something within you is provoked to open up. It's the end of your self-contained composure for you to be undone. Okay, I can't deal with it any longer. There, very good. Now you're at bet. So what do? Because you're conscious of the burden and you respond, that's the ayin nun hey of Isaiah 58. The interesting thing that the mem, ayin mem somic, means heavy load, a burden. Yeshua said, come to me, all you are heavily laden, and I'll give you rest. What did he mean by that? Where's the rest? Where's the rest? I'm suggesting that the list of verbs that we can appropriate to these letters of the alphabet is this, call it a meditation, call it a gamut, call it this array, this arrangement of things that Yahuwah told us to do, being his people. Right out of the gate, he said, here, no, wait a minute, that isn't right out of the gate. If you find yourself in dismay, afflicted physically, mentally, financially, relationally, circumstantially, you can't just Shema what? Why should you? You're in this state. So as I was going through this list of verbs, I was trying to organize them in terms of a logical, rational process. When Yahweh says, I'm going to be your Elohim and you're going to be my people. Okay, what does that mean? What do we do? How do we think? If we start off with, I'm in a lament, that means I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of my consciousness, my life, my predicament. And bet is to reach out to say, in response, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That's English, that's New Testament, Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount. But what does that mean? What I picture, the Mishkan pattern, is this big fence with the four-colored blue, purple, red, white name of Yahuwah on it. That's the kingdom of heaven. That's the promised pasture. That's the place of treasure, of resolution, of resolve, of finding what we're looking for, what we need. The promise of assurance in the midst of nothingness. How do we get that? So this picture of the Mishkan pattern, starting with the het, and inside the het, the fence is the barbecue grill, then the laver, and then the covered place has the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, and then in the Kodosh Kodashim is the Ark of the Covenant. Well, what's outside the het? Vav Zion, the place of the red heifer sacrifice, the place of the crucifixion before Yeshua is thrown into the tomb. So where is this? What is this outside the fence? It's the place of torment. So this picture of this analogy, this metaphor, this Mishkan pattern can be played out at numerous different levels. And what I'm trying to say is that in my mind, they're all overlay all at the same time. And I'm just trying to give you a little bit of clarity for what I'm talking about, in that the place of the red heifer sacrifice, those who were in contact with the dead were unclean and couldn't get into the Mishkan. Not everybody could get in the Mishkan. You brought your sacrifice, only the Levites and priests were in there. Again, it's a type. You can't get in if you're in contact with the dead. So you have to be cleansed with the ashes of the red heifer so you can come in to the big white fence. I'm not talking about the protocols of temple worship or Mishkan, who's allowed in and who's not. It's typology. So if we've been playing around with the skull and crossbones, if we're in the darkness and death of the world system, and we are finding ourselves in the port of spirit lament, of groaning, of lost at sea, of undone, realizing that we've been lied to and deceived, and people are overreaching into our space and ripping us off, it's like, what do we do? There's the shining big white fence of Yahweh's name, of Yahuwah's kingdom. And what Moshe said is, I put before you life and death, blessing or cursing, and I suggest you choose life. There's no doctrine there. There's no commandments there. There's no list of rules. There's no nothing. But you find yourself lost, and here's found. You find yourself dead, and here's the promise of life. You find yourself with no hope, and here's the promise of hope, but you must choose life. So if Aleph is the ego and lament, in Bet is the id, the yod, reaching out to reconnect with Yahweh. That's the prodigal son. That's a Jeremiah 31 of Ephraim saying, after my rebellion, I repented. It's all how you translate those words, Shin Bet. It's not translated that way, but and as soon as he did, he said, bring me back and I will come back. That's Gimel. That's connecting. That's reestablishing the nexus, the bond of the Bet being alienated and coming back to Elohim. But he gave us the right to be free, at liberty, disconnected with him as humans, and to re-engage on purpose with intent, because it's our choice. That's the Dalet choosing to Gimel, to be Bet with instead of Bet against. So the Dalet is the choice. How do we reconnect? Well, there's this verb that's spelled habet, hey, bet, yod, tet. Bet, tet, aleph. It means to look at the aspect. It also means utterance. To look at what he said. When the people of Israel were bitten by vipers for being stupid, and all of a sudden these vipers manifested, what was that? Their own stuff manifesting? Different story. But the point is, Moshe lifted up the serpentine shiny, coppery shape. Excuse me? Moshe lifted up the Nun Samic thing, and whoever looked at it, that word to look at is hey bet tet, or hey bet yod tet, or bet tet aleph. And Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, the same way Moshe lifted that up, whoever looks to will be saved. What looks to me? What? To lift something up is Nun Samic. He gave a banner, that's a Nun Samic. To be lifted up, that's Nun Samic. As a miraculous way of escape, that's Nun Samic. Nun Samakayan. If you start looking at the spelling of the words, what did he say? There's the key of escape. There's the answer. If you look at the word for bush, hey, Samic Nun, hey, made a little sticker of that, a little graphic. It's the Nun Samic superimposed. Samic and Nun, what's that? Samic is the organized structure, Nun is the meaning, Nun is the pronunciation of Samic, what's written. How many things can we see in Nun Samic? But if we choose life, well, the thief on the cross chose life, and Yeshua said, I tell you today, you'll be with me in paradise. Two ways to hear that. I tell you, today you'll be with me in paradise. They're going to die, and moments later they'll be in paradise. Or he's saying, I told you today. Later, when after the resurrection, when everything is said and done and everything plays out, you'll be with me in paradise. But the point is, either way, the thief on the cross didn't have any chance to keep the Sabbath day, or go give alms to the poor, or do some righteous deeds. All he had was his heart. He chose life. He didn't even say, I choose life. He says, hey, will you please remember me? Yeah, that's the act of choosing. He, you might say, turned his heart to what Yeshua hanging on that crucifix somehow represented to him. We don't even know what was going on there. But somehow he looked to Yeshua being lifted up and appropriated a value which bought him life. If we're told, and I'm processing through this page 11, just so you know, if we find ourselves in the lament of our ego, the floundering ship, and from deep within our id, our yod reaches, and I say id and yod because yod is spelled yodalit, and it's pronounced in English letters ID, id, which happens to be the inner self that opens up and reaches out. It's just an interesting way it all plays. And if we choose life, bachar, betket resh would be the verb, bachar chai, or chayim, which would be the biggest life, the multiple life. Habet, look at what he said. Well, if you're looking at what he said, what does that mean you have to do? Well, that's the next thing, which is lamed. Lamed literally means learn, teach, repeat. Lamed. Lamed what? His dabar, what he said, his word. And then ayin mem kuf is, as we said that last week, it means valley, but it means deep study. And the word Sinai, like Mount Sinai, Samic Yod Nun Yod, literally means erudite scholarship. There was a picture I made, purple background, and it had like the scroll on fire. And this was on there. Alfun, Aleph Lamed Pei Vav Nun, is a school for the intensive study of Hebrew. So this Lamed, Dabar, Emek, Sinai, Alfun, it all just means set your mind to look at what he said, which means you have to take on that as your life. So we're following through this alphabet sequence as if it was the human gamut of what does he expect us to do? What does he want us to do? I can tell you what Deuteronomy 10 says, but we're not even there yet, because all we're at is we find ourselves in a rut of trouble. We reach out and choose life to connect with the creator of life. And the first thing he gives us to do is look at what I said. Learn, study. And then as we make that our own, the Vav, man. Number 6, the connection, the masculine suffix, the connecting tool, drash, bakash, bakar, and chakar. Dalet reshin, bet kuf shin, bet kuf resh, het kuf resh, seek, quest, examine, investigate. In other words, it's learning with intent, proactive. I'm going to do this. You make it your own, and that becomes your essence of your identity. Seeking his words. And then Zion, the 7th letter, which is to swear a vow, which is to cut off, which is to be ornamented like with a halo, with an officer's cap, which is to say, this is now your identity. Kuf het, dalet bet kuf, het Zion kuf. 3 words, het kuf, seize, take hold, dalet bet kuf, cling, pursue, and chazak, strong with encouragement. It's an attitude of making it your everything and pursuing with all your heart and all your soul. And then what? Het is the next letter after Zion. Kuf shin tet is the word to adorn. It's the word for a bow. It's the word for truth. Ayin resh kaf, eriktology. Bet resh, assess, evaluate, make straight, adorn, make true. In other words, as we're seeking, examining, investigating, seizing, take hold, clinging, and pursuing, at some point you got to say, is this the truth? Have I been pursuing the truth? Or was I deceived? Is this real, or is this the land of make-believe? If someone says, "You who scorns this testimony, this testament for mankind, is rejecting God himself and the Holy Spirit, which is there and revealed." Is that true? Everybody likes to say that. Every single religion will tell you this is the truth. And if you reject it, you're going to be lost. You're going to burn in hell. Am I not at liberty to evaluate the merits of the sentence before I'm rejected for even thinking to analyze it? Would Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, say, take me at face value? No, he didn't say that. What he said was, tell the history of the family. Has there ever been a story, ever a nation, ever a religion, ever a deity who speaks in such real voice from the top of the flaming mountain, and you all heard it, and then pulled himself out of people from the midst of this great empire of Egypt, wiping them out with plagues and signs and wonders? Do you think this didn't really happen? But there are people today who say, no, that didn't happen. And then for Yeshua to rise from the dead, think that didn't happen? There's people who think it didn't happen. What's he have to do to prove the reality? He said, come, let us reason together. Oh, if you start reasoning, now you're Gnostic. That's bad. That's what they'll tell you. Oh, really? I'm not allowed to think. I'm not allowed to reason. I'm not allowed to analyze. How do I know that's not a trick? We'll get to that in a couple minutes in Deuteronomy 10, Deuteronomy 4. I need to be able, why do I have this with the letter het? Because the kingdom of Yahweh in this land of make-believe is that he says, oh, I want you to think. As a matter of fact, according to the record I read, Yahweh invented the human brain to be able to think logically and reasonably, scientifically, rationally. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 2 plus 3 equals 5. Every time. On the face of the earth. Maybe in some other dimension of some other mysterious universe, it's different. But here, that's the way it is. And he made it so. That's Het Shin Bet. We'll get into that in a little bit. In this kingdom, he tells us, you better analyze this stuff. You better look at it, and you better see that it can all be arranged, order and row. That's eriktology, really. So that comes in. Learn, study, pursue, and see that it's all this beautiful arrangement. That's all rational consciousness. The letter Tet, Kuf Resh Aleph, Kuf Tav Bet. Assemble, learn to read, write the words. Wham, we're thrown right into what did he say in his language. Learn to read it and write it on the doorpost of your house and upon your gates as frontlets between your eyes and on your hand. Learn his language. Tet, like the wedding ring, like the shield, the seal. Yod, Shema. Here, listen. Kuf Shin Bet also means hear and listen. Aleph Zayin Nun also means hear and listen and balance it. It's not just, whatever stories. No, it has to make sense. This is progressive. What you were learning back at the the revelation, seek and examine, drash, that's Vav, make it your own. Your identity becomes this. Take hold and cling. Pursue. Dalet Bet Kuf. Dalet Bet is the word for bear. Kuf is almost like this picture, this bear claw, pursuing and grabbing hold. Once you learn to read and write his words, now you can hear. You can't hear before you have any idea what he said. Shema is a very intellectual thing. Hear, O Israel, listen up, boys. No, it's Shema. With your mind engaged with your ear and everything ordered so you get it and you believe it. You understand it rationally, and so you base your life upon it, so you do it. So you engage it. That's Shema. And because of that, the next letter, Kaf, Shamar, guard, observe, and keep. Once you realize what you're hearing, you guard the truth of it. You don't let it get polluted. Shamar also means to remove the dregs, rake the leaves and the broken branches that you're going to trip off the path. At the letter Lamed here, so then walk as directed. Halakha haderek, walk. He uses that verb very often. And then the letter Mem, Ahava, and you shall love. Love your neighbors yourself, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul. That's a commanded verb. How do you love him? You can't do that out of the gate in the very beginning. That has to come after you're listening and you're believing and you're guarding and your walking is directed. Then you can build this love. Based on everything that's going on within you, you can love. And then Nun, when he says Asha Chok, do the commands. We'll see in Deuteronomy here 10, that's the nooning of the Mem. That is what he gave us as the expression of love. So we can sit here and go to a meeting and sing a bunch of beautiful songs and say, this is your love, this is your worship. What he said was, if you love me, keep my commandments. Even Yeshua said that. What's his command? To love him. Oh, so if we love him, we do it by loving him. I heard that said to me one time. What he said was, if you love me, do what I said. Keep my command. Asha chok. He arranged this reality in this make-believe world of land of Israel. Let's call that the people of Israel. If we want to show him that we love him, do what he said. Whether or not you can sing a song, if he said, sit down and don't work on the Sabbath day, you can do that as the expression of love, because that's what he said. Samik, Obed, Ayin Bet Dalet. Obed is where we get the word obedience, Obadiah. It means to worship, and it means servant. If doing what he said is the noon, then the stomach is, I want to worship you. I'll do what you said. I'll be your servant. What do you want me to do? You want me to sit down on the seventh day? Okay, I'm going to serve you by sitting down on the seventh day. Hey, we don't have to do that around here. No, you have a different God. Remember, this is the make-believe God we're talking about. This make-believe God has told us this stuff. Don't you know who this is? If you don't think that your God tells you to do these things, it's a different God. If you, being a people, are not required to do what he said, well, you've got a different God. So at the letter Ayin, have Yada. Know, K-N-O-W, Yahuwah. Know him. Ayin. The letter Ayin as a word, spelled Ayin Yod Nun, literally means weigh carefully, balance exactly. It's a deep spring that, like this source of pure water coming from the depth where it's been filtered and percolated and gushing out. It's like the depth of one's inner being, thinking, measuring, weighing, contemplating, balancing, listening from the depth of your heart. Know Yahweh. It's the seed inside the fruit. It's the pupil inside the eye. It's the DNA inside the cell. It's the reality because you chose life. You looked at what he said, and you learned, and you sought, and you seized, and you made true by analyzing and assessing and learning to read and writing his words and taking it to heart to listen, observe, and walk it out like he said. And that's the expression of love that he commanded us. I'm going through the whole list again here to bring us up to this is worshiping him. See, this is all this inner stuff so far. Knowing him is an act of worship. Knowing him, how he described himself, who he manifested himself to be in this letter array, is knowing him is the act of worship. And then knowing him to desire him, to desire to be his. Pay, the opening of the self. Het shin kuf, het pei zadi, bet ayin hey, aleph vav hey, het mem dalet, desire, longed for, joined together, delighting in. And then zadi, first that which opens sprouts, like Yeshua coming out of the grave, like the opening of a blossom. Hodu, express praise, thanks, glory, confession. That's where Hodu comes in. After all this other stuff, it's a blossoming expression of your own inner, deepest self in appreciation for who he is. Kuf, seeking refuge in the name of Yahweh. And it's not just, say the sacred four letters. It's not just some story you heard, it's that culminating expression of all this. Kuf. Kuf means the back of the head. It means after this. It means that which comes next. It means that which follows. And it's the rising up, seeking refuge in his name. Because that's what he said. Resh, Yirah, fear, honor, reverence. And because of that, Altira, no fear of anybody or anything else, not even the devil. Not even the plagues and pestilence that might be coming to the rest of the earth. Shin, Kadosh, be Kadoshi. And as such, be emets, courageous, taking on that, his inner flame. And Tav, Bet Tet Chet, Kuf Vav Hey, Betoch, hope, Tikva, expecting, securely confident, at ease. Why? Because he said, Ani Yahweh, Elohim Zavot. And if we are listening to his command, his Zadivav, it puts us in league with all his other array of military forces, his Zavot, who have nothing to fear, nothing to lose, everything to gain. The interesting thing we discussed before is that the word navy comes from the word navigation, which in Hebrew is Hagah, Hey Gimel Hey, which is the accurate steering, pondering, helmsmanship, the phonetic spelling of words. It all goes back to what did he say? Who is this guy? What did he say? We're going to take a break in just a moment. We're going to go to page 1 of Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 to 17. Now, Israel, what did Yahweh, your Elohim, request of you if you're being his people? Very simple matter. Verse 12 of Deuteronomy 10, in this land of make-believe, this Elohim, this God of Israel, has a request. Shin Aleph Lamed. It's the word shall, pronounced shall, like shall I do something? That's where we get the English word. So go ahead and make the break, Kurt, and we'll pick up with that.